Hi everybody, and welcome to another tutorial here with the Miriam Online Academy. Today we are looking at the hit song Shallow from the movie A Star Is Born. Now, we've already done another tutorial that was based on the official sheet music, and hopefully you find that useful. We put the link in the description for those of you who just want a slightly more simple version. What we're doing today is taking you through a tutorial of a more advanced arrangement that I've done of this song that to me adds a little more interest, adds a little more dynamics, some contrast, a few little licks that you might be able to apply to some other songs, and we're going to be doing exactly the same thing with this arrangement as we did with the other one, chopping it up section by section, going through the intro, the verse, the chorus, giving you a regular speed and half speed playback, and of course talking about the tips and maybe some of the reasons why I've added what we've added to this arrangement. So thank you so much again for stopping by. We're going to get started right away. One of the reasons that I always feel compelled to create these arrangements of something that's already out there and so well known is that I have a few pet peeves about sheet music as it's put out there in the first place. One of them is that they really don't give you a lot of tips on what to do with dynamics. They don't really give you a lot of tips with how to use the full range of the instrument. And although a lot of people don't notice this or think of this as a problem, they often use repeats for the first and the second verse, which means as a piano player, you're just playing the same thing, even though when you listen to the song, the second verse always has a little bit more intensity. So what we've done with this arrangement is we have tried to add all of those extra color bits that I would normally do instinctively as a piano player on a gig or in the studio, and given you the notes at home so you can replicate this and learn from it as much as possible. So we're going to start with the introduction, which of course you always want to nail as strongly as possible. It lets people know exactly what song you're going to be doing. So even if you're going to go and do your own thing later, playing the intro fairly close to the way it is in the recording, make sure that people know what song you're going to do. And then it helps them to expect or to know what's going to come. So the intro, of course, on our arrangement is the first two lines right there. We're going to do it regular speed and half speed so you have some practice things. And I'm going to tell you about a few things that we've added there that you will notice is a little different from the original arrangement. So here it is at regular speed. I'll just do that one more time. And now slow down. 2, 3, and. Great, so you can run through that at home. You can press rewind as many times as you need. Now here's the few things that we've added to give this a bit more authenticity than what I felt the original sheet music does. You may notice that I've added a few extra notes right in that area, which is the A on the G major. Now, we call that adding the second or adding the ninth. And you hear that a lot in pop music and even country music. So all we're doing here is every time we hit that G in the intro, we're just adding that A, thickens it up a little bit. Now the other thing we've done is added a triplet there, which you often hear guitar players do all the time. You'll sort of hear them play an open string, quickly squeeze off a note and then let it off again to sort of create a bit of a triplet sound. So we've added that in there too. So there you have the intro. Moving on to the verse, we're going to start to talk about some musical principles that you will hear me talk about a lot. One of them is the idea of really having the melody nice and strong on top, because as piano players, especially when we are doing solo piano, you have to have that top note brought out because there's no singer, there's no saxophone player, there's no guitar player. We're playing a couple of roles at once, and we're playing the melody as well as accompaniment, and you need to make sure that there's a separation. When you don't do that, it winds up sounding kind of like a MIDI file or something that feels very flat, very mechanical, very unmusical, quite frankly. And you can hear the difference right away. I'm just going to play a couple of bars with just no dynamics, no nothing, and then hear what a difference it makes when you bring the melody note out a little bit more. So this is kind of just flat. I mean, you can sort of tell what I'm doing, but it's like it's missing a bit of a sparkle there. Now hear the difference when we just bring out that top note. It takes some practice, but it's essentially no trickier than just making sure that the top note that you're playing is a little bit louder. You will have to work on it, but once you get it, this is something that is going to apply to anything that you learn in the future. You're really going to be grateful that you spent a few minutes to get this right. So let's go through the rest of the first verse. We'll play it through at regular speed again to give you a bit of a practice track. Here we go. 2, 3, and. And back for half speed. 2, 3, and. And that ends the first verse. Now we've got what people will call either an interlude or a little bit of an instrumental break. And in the original, all they do is essentially repeat 4 bars of the intro. That's great. I got a little bored of it, and so since we've got the advantage of all of these notes on the piano, I thought, why don't we change the range, which refers to what octave you're playing in, and I brought it up an octave just to give the ear a little bit of interest, let people know that there's some progression, that we're going somewhere with this arrangement. So here's this 4-bar interlude between verse 1 and verse 2. So that's a little different than the original, of course. But essentially, it's using a lot of the same notes. I'm going to do the same thing again, just on regular speed, and then we'll slow it down. And half speed. Now there's a few little tricks in there that you should be aware of. If you caught that, I'm playing that A and B. I'm actually smushing both of those notes with my thumb. If you've got a smaller hand and you're not able to do that, you can always just play the octave. G. But if you've got the space and you can stretch out to that 11th and 12th, nothing wrong with playing 2 notes with 1 finger. We call that efficiency. So it's just like that. Then the other thing that we've done is added just a bit of a flourish right at the end, which is 2/4. And I do that by playing the thumb and the 2nd finger, and then the 3rd and the 5th finger. So you don't really have to move your hand once you're there. So I'm just doing that. Kind of sounds cool. And you can add that to literally any major chord on any pop song that you're doing. It's kind of an interesting little thing. Heads into verse number 2. Now, just like we did in the interlude, I've changed the range, because of course, in the movie, this is where Lady Gaga starts singing. And she does start in her lower range, but how do we make that sound different on a piano? Because of course, E sounds like E sounds like E. We don't have the advantage of a different timbre, a different tone, like a singer does. So again, I've just changed the texture a little bit. You'll notice that it sits a little bit higher in the range. Another thing you'll notice on the arrangements that we've done here is we have added dynamic markings. This is really critical because as we're talking about what notes to change, the range of the piano, one of the other things that is just chronically missing from pop sheet music all the time, and I don't know why this is they don't put dynamic markings in. Dynamics just on their own add such a huge range of musicality, and it's not like the original track doesn't have the dynamics. You hear the original songs, and there's all kinds of highs and lows and softs and louds. Why not put that when you're playing the piano arrangement? So here's verse 2, regular speed, and we'll slow it down. We're into the chorus. Back to second verse slow this time. We're into the chorus. So that second verse just starts to add a little bit of syncopation. Now, when we say syncopation, you may have heard that word before, really just means kind of an offsetting of emphasis between the left hand or right hand, or putting an emphasis where you wouldn't normally expect one, and it kind of adds a bit of rhythmic interest to what you're playing. So we've done that with a few 16th notes in here. So we're going to take a look at 2 bars specifically to really understand how that syncopation is adding a bit of rhythmic interest. We're going to slow it way down and even zoom in on just those 2 bars so we can really understand how to count that out in slow-mo so you can practice at home, get a lot more comfortable with it. So let's just clear this page first, and let's just zoom in on these last 2 bars. So we're just looking at this right here. And I'm going to do my best to count this. This is kind of like a type of thing. Playing and counting can sometimes be a little bit difficult, but you know what? You have to do it to get it right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So every time we've got one of these quarter notes, we're actually splitting it up into 4 little slices. And so when you slow it down this much, you can actually count 4 to every beat, even if you're not playing 16th notes. And that's actually a really good way to practice this at home. So I'll do that once more so you can really see exactly what I'm doing. And you can use this technique for any passage that you're having a little bit of trouble with, this arrangement or anything else. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. I do it all the time as well. It's a really good way to make sure that you're being rhythmically accurate. And once it feels settled, it's really kind of fun to speed it up and play this the way it's supposed to. And there you have it. All right, so now let's move on to the chorus. This is the really fun part where we start to break out and use more of the range of the instrument, both in terms of the octave we're playing in and the dynamics. And you notice I've mentioned dynamics a couple times. I have even marked in forte, which means good old-fashioned loud. First time this chorus comes in, and you remember on the recording, or if you even remember the movie, this is when Lady Gaga jumps up the octave, and the whole crowd just responds with this huge applause, and it's actually a very dramatic moment. She really knows how to use the range of her voice to great effect. So we're trying to replicate that really as much as we possibly can on piano. So we'll play it through at regular speed, half speed, just like we've been doing with everything else. I'm going to start just a couple of bars before to really lead into it. We'll play this at full tempo right now. That really is the main theme of the chorus. So let's try that at half speed now, and I'll start right at the top of the chorus. Why don't we do that once more? Nice. So coming out of the first chorus, we get into this section where it really starts to chill out a little bit. Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper are singing a beautiful harmony line, and as it's written in the music, it sort of feels a little bit plain, but in the song itself, it's a very tender moment, and it's a nice way to contrast from the intensity of the chorus. So how do we do this? Well, one of the things is we go back to the very first point, or one of the very first points I make, which is making sure that the melody is really singing out nicely, and then we sort of try and create this nice rocking feel with your left hand. which almost mimics like sort of a basic rock feel. But the most important thing about this whole section is it needs to be dynamically contrasting from the chorus. If you just ram into this at full volume, it's going to feel really awkward. It's not going to have that nice sort of moment, that breath that the song really needs before you hit the bridge and build up to a second chorus. Music is all about this ebb and flow and the contrast between highs and lows, and so like we keep mentioning, this is a great way of injecting some musicality into what you're doing. So I'm going to play just the last few bars of the chorus and just listen to the contrast between going from like a high volume to a nice low volume, and just the tension kind of just lets go. That's the effect you want to create at home as best as you possibly can. And that last bar really just needs to kind of hang out there, almost like bells, you know. In fact, if you wanted to take that up an octave, maybe that's even an idea. So this entire chunk is all about really bringing it back, letting it sit nice and relaxed, and making sure that that melody is really ringing out. I'm going to do that at half speed now. So now we hit the bridge. This is, I mean, in most pop songs, the bridge kind of takes you to a slightly different harmonic place or a slightly different texture. What I find so interesting about this song is Lady Gaga just didn't even, I don't know if I'd say she didn't bother to write lyrics, but she heard this as essentially a purely musical texture. There's no words here, it's just her singing vowels. And it really brings up the tension, huge, to head in to the second chorus. And that's, of course, what our job here on the piano is to try and, again, emulate that as much as we possibly can. It's all about the build. You'll notice that we have written in this big, long crescendo. And you see that sort of hairpin. And that's a really good visual description of what you should be doing. This should be one big, long build of intensity and of volume building up to that last chorus. Because of course, once we hit this note right here, to me, that is the complete peak of the song. That should be the loudest thing you play. That should be the most intense thing that's happening when you get there. And the bridge is like just one big ski jump leading right up to it. So you can have some fun with it. So here's what it sounds like at regular speed. So on and so forth. Let's go back and try that half speed now, really explore exactly all of those little tips we've been talking about, keeping the melody on top, really chilling out after the bridge, and then building into that second chorus. And I'll guide you through it. So we're just going to start about 8 bars before the bridge comes in. Really bringing it down. Bell tones, and then slowly starting to build. Building more. So on and so forth. So you can hear that we were really aiming for that first chord of the second chorus, and it was a nice big build through that whole bridge. If you do that, you are going to build so much excitement for the people who are listening to you play this. They're not going to tell that you're even playing sheet music. It's going to sound like you're playing this concerto-like version of the song. It's fantastic, and it makes it more fun for you as well as the player. So let's really get into this last chorus and then take the piece out to the end. Like we said, coming out of the bridge, you want to be landing on that second chorus with almost as much weight, as much volume and intensity as you possibly can. Now, I'm going to throw in a quick technique tip here because I don't want anybody at home to start really tensing up their arms or injuring themselves or trying to like whack the piano. That is not how you get a really big sound out of the piano. Anybody who's really done a lot of work, especially in the classical realm, will know that the weight of your arms themselves and just the weight of your own upper body is actually how you get really great tone with a lot of power and a lot of force. So as you're going up with these octaves here and leading up to there, so it's almost like you're trying to push the key rather than hit the key. That's probably the simplest way to talk about it because I don't want people to like get really tense and start whacking the keys. You might even hurt the piano if you're doing this on a digital. So just nice and loose, but using the weight of your arm to really get those keys sort of pressed down and to create that power. Just like that. Now there's a couple of little interesting things that we've added to this arrangement, and I'm going to point them out as we go through. There's this little passage in here which is definitely nothing to do with the melody, and this is just a little bit of extra texture that's there to create interest, to create motion. This, even though we're at a double forte at this point, that should not be at a double forte. That little section right there that I've circled should actually be closer to like a mezzo forte or even a mezzo piano. It's just like a little ripple that you're hearing underneath these two big layers of volume. And I'll play it again so you can really hear what I'm talking about, and I'll start right at the top of the chorus. So it's this little... So that should be way down so that this is still ringing over. And then we're into the end section. So I'm going to play the chorus again, really nice and slow to give you a nice practice track at home. And then we'll move on to sort of this last harmony section that takes the tune to its conclusion. So second chorus, half speed. last home stretch. So one of the unusual parts about this song is that the full drum groove doesn't actually come in until the very end of the song. That doesn't happen very often. You usually have sort of the beat or the drum groove that comes in almost immediately at the top of the song. In this case, it's after the second chorus where you actually start to hear a full sort of a nice typical drum beat come in on the original recording. So we're trying to emulate that as much as we possibly can. And so we've done this here. It exists in the original arrangement as well, but we've added just a little bit more complexity to those who are looking for a slightly more advanced challenge. So let's play that, and we're going to be listening to that sort of rocking feeling and, of course, paying attention to all the syncopation. So. Go back and do that once more. So I don't know if you could tell, but I wasn't doing this just for the sake of video. Sometimes I do this even when I'm playing. When I really want to be feeling a groove, sometimes I'll even bop my head a little bit because I find that that comes out in my playing. When my body is feeling the rhythm, when my body is sort of feeling the quarter note, it makes my fingers sort of accentuate the beats that I want to be accentuated just instinctively. Maybe you want to try that at home. It looks a lot cooler than it feels. I realize it probably might feel a little bit silly the first time you do it. So here's the last section again. We'll slow it down right to half speed. Back way off. And then the last bell tone. You may have noticed that we doubled, or what I would call tagged, that last section. With the original recording, it just goes through that harmony section once. We actually took that up an octave at the very end and sort of doubled it up because it felt like, well, we had a little bit more mileage to go there. So that's the last section, and then of course it ends on this really beautiful, nice, quiet bell tone. So there you have it. Shallow, a slightly more advanced version for those of you who are looking for something with a bit of challenge to it. I hope the tutorial has been helpful, but more than anything, I hope you have fun playing this piece. It's a lot of fun. It's very popular. It's something you can get out of parties, something that you can play along with singers, or of course, now you've got an arrangement that works really well for solo piano. Enjoy, have fun. We'll see you back for another video at the Miriam Online Academy.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching Miriam's Online Academy. Check back here for more videos and don't forget to subscribe below.